Hi everyone, I'm Celeste. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Good morning. It's Mother's Day, so happy Mother's Day to all of you moms out there. I'm a mom myself, and so it's a special day for me. I have a son, Evan, and he's my joy. And so I wish all of you a super happy day today, and hopefully it's going to be sunny wherever you are. It is where I am. And, you know, to all of you who are not parents or mothers, you are equally important. And so hats off to you as well today. You know, it takes a village to raise a child, any child. And there are so many important and influential people in a child's life and so many heroes. So you are a hero, even if you're not biologically a mother. With that said, I just wanted to do sort of a part 2 catch up from my birthday haul that I did a couple weeks ago. And I think it got kind of late, and so I was done filming for the day. But and then last Sunday I took off just because it was such a gorgeous day out, and I just wanted to sort of refill the well and refuel and do some reading and think about what sort of reading directions I might want to go in next. So yeah, so let's see, just to catch up. I think, as I had mentioned, I finished the Enchanted April by Elizabeth von Arnim. I did talk about it a bit, so I won't go into detail again. My only thought that I would like to add with this book is that Elizabeth von Arnim, at least in this work, because it's the only one I've read by her, but she is really a master of psychological detail. I think I've only read of 2, maybe 3 other women authors who really know how to articulate a psychological landscape of what's going on, of small group dynamics, and what people are thinking, and some of the things that are so abstract that I would never know how to articulate in a novel, she has been able to do. And then I would say Jane Austen, of course, is the queen of articulating psychological landscape and internal musings about interrelationships among people. And Elizabeth von Arnim is definitely in that category as well. I think, as I've mentioned, I think for some she might be deceptively twee, but she's really not. She knows what she's doing, and she's a fantastic writer. So this was a joy. And then I had also gotten this vintage copy of Daddy Longlegs by Jean Webster, and I read that again as well. And this is a story that's told in the form of letters from the main character to Daddy Longlegs, who is her benefactor. And so it's epistolary, and so most of the chapters begin Dear Daddy Longlegs, and sort of traces her development as she makes her way through college and falls in love with someone at school, and it's all done through letters. I would love sometime to do just epistolary novels and epistolary books and letters. And speaking of letters, I had also received this lovely book, 100 Letters That Changed the World, edited by Colin Salter. And it's been really brilliant. I just love it. So many great letters in here. I love primary sources. I love learning social history from primary materials. And actually, that's another video I would love to do, primary resources, first-person accounts, and so forth, in maybe a history video or a social history video. And so I've really, really been enjoying this. Roosevelt sends Churchill the poem that moved Abraham Lincoln. So many things. You're going to learn so many little insightful details about so many figures from the past, and not all of them famous. Some were just average, everyday folks who wrote a letter. And sometimes that's the best way to learn social history, is through those sorts of exchanges. So it's a lovely volume, and I highly, highly recommend it. And then I've been enjoying two collections. They're both selected and introduced by Carolyn Kennedy, the daughter of Jacqueline Kennedy-Onassis. And the first is The Best Loved Poems of Jacqueline Kennedy-Onassis, selected and introduced by Carolyn Kennedy. Lovely photo on the cover there, speaking of Mother's Day. And again, on the back, there's a painting, family scene with Jacqueline Kennedy-Onassis and her children. And so these are poems selected by Carolyn Kennedy that her mother loved and that she recited and read throughout her lifetime. There's lots of great favorites in here. There's poetry by Vachel Lindsay, Hilaire Belloc, Robert Louis Stevenson. There's Sailing to Byzantium by William Butler Yeats, which begins, "That is no country for old men." And of course, that line was later used as a title by Cormac McCarthy, "No Country for Old Men." There's lots of interesting behind-the-scenes photographs here. Here's one on the section Romance and Love, and that's President Kennedy and Jackie Kennedy. And, you know, regardless of the ups and downs in their marriage, and of course the tragic ending that John F. Kennedy came to, there's just some lovely, lovely moments from her life that are visited here in the guise of poems. And it gives you sort of a glimpse into her poetic soul. And it's just a lovely collection. And there's another one selected and introduced by Carolyn Kennedy. It's called "She Walks in Beauty, A Woman's Journey Through Poems." So this sort of addresses many phases of a woman's life, and you know, in all of its different forms. I'm just looking at the table of contents here. So we've got love, work, beauty, clothes and things of this world, breaking up, marriage, growing up and growing old, silence and solitude, friendship, death, grief, how to live. And there's actually an entire section on motherhood. I marked one in particular that I really like by a favorite poet of mine, and that is Seamus Heaney. And so it is from a longer work called Clearances, In Memoriam, MKH, and it's by Seamus Heaney, and it's just a lovely, lovely poem. And you know, there are so many sort of sentimental, old-fashioned, lovely poems about mothers for Mother's Day, but this one is really rather more homely and real, in my opinion. And it's about the speaker as a child remembering that when he was little, it says, "When all the others were away at Mass, I was all hers as we peeled potatoes. They broke the silence, let fall one by one, like solder weeping off the soldering iron." Isn't that lovely? "Cold comfort set between us, things to share, gleaming in a bucket of clean water, and again let fall, little pleasant splashes from each other's work would bring us to our senses. So while the parish priest at her bedside went hammer and tongs at the prayer for the dying, and some were responding and some crying, I remember her head bent towards my head, her breath in mine, our fluent dipping knives, never closer the whole rest of our lives." Gives me chills. To me, that's sort of a real moment, really down to earth. And, you know, the sentimental classic poems of motherhood are also wonderful. And there's a time and place for those as well. But to me, it's sort of the harsher, clear light of morning, and the simple act of peeling potatoes with paring knives, dipping into water. And then the image is juxtaposed with her on her deathbed and the priest around her and, you know, saying his prayers and so forth. And this child remembering the one moment where they were closest is really touching to my heart. So it's a wonderful collection. There are so many great poems like that in here. She Walks in Beauty, A Woman's Journey Through Poems. And then there are two other books that I wanted to share with you that I received as gifts for my birthday. This first one is absolutely beautiful. It's called The Language of Flowers, a fully illustrated compendium of meaning, literature, and lore for the modern romantic. It's by Odessa Begay, and she is an illustrator. So that's the front and that's the back. And so on the back it says, a sumptuously illustrated and entertaining compendium of 50 of the world's most beloved flowers to delight modern romantics. I know for sure this is going on my bedside table this spring and summer. And so basically what it is, it's a bit like florography or the language of flowers, in that it goes through various flowers. So for example, there's chrysanthemum, lovely image to go with that. And then let me find some other ones for you here. Magnolia and sunflower. So really lovely artwork to go with each of these. And what she does is she does give you the language of flowers meaning with it. So for example, sunflower is haughtiness. And then she explains a little bit about the climates that it can grow in, the conditions that it loves. She also gives you some sort of folklore and traditional medicinal uses for the particular bloom, as well as some anecdotes from history, as well as quotes from literature or passages from literature. So for example, oops, I marked a spot and my sticky just fell out here. She has Forget-Me-Not. So here's the passage for Forget-Me-Not. And it says, the forget-me-not has been known as a symbol of love and remembrance since the medieval ages in both historical and mythological texts. And she talks about Henry of Lancaster, who was later King Henry IV in 1398. And there's an incident involving forget-me-nots. And then she talks about some other history, and I love this. It's the knight's helmet with the forget-me-nots poked in through the holes there. She gives quotes from poetry. There's passages from Thomas More, Walt Whitman. She talks about ancient rituals using things like hyacinth, and she talks about a hibiscus that belonged to Georgia O'Keeffe. Lots and lots of little stories and anecdotes and poems and references in literature, accompanied by her gorgeous, gorgeous artwork. There's Dahlia. So I really like this. It goes sort of beyond the language of flowers and gives you a little bit meatier substance, and it's just such a gorgeous book. Who could resist this, right? So yeah, The Language of Flowers, Odessa Begay. And speaking of which, I had shown footage of Highland Park in my last video. which is a place I absolutely have fallen in love with. Hadn't been there in a long time and recently went back and was looking at the London plane trees and the magnolias and the cherry blossoms. And at this time of the year in May in Rochester, we are actually famous for our Highland Park Lilac Festival, which is, I believe, a 10-day festival. And we are known as the Flower City, and it's a play on words because we're known as the FLOUR Flower City because of the number of mills, flour mills that the city had. But additionally, we're known as the flower, as in blooms, city, because we're known for having so many varieties of lilacs, and lots of first ladies have visited Rochester and stopped at Highland Park. We have many, many different rare varieties. I think there's over 66. I may have that wrong. I didn't research it before I started filming. But so my son and I went to the Lilac Festival yesterday, and it was gorgeous. And while we were there, I picked up a small bottle of perfume, and it is, if I can get it here, Highland Lilac. I'll just hold that up for you. So there is that. And I'll read you the little brochure that accompanies it. It says, the Highland Lilac fragrance was created in 1967. And there's a selection and testing of rare oils. Highland Lilac is one of America's finest perfumes. In spring, the rare double flowering and other special varieties of lilac buds and blossoms are harvested, collected, and tested. And the lilac has been cherished by every generation of American. In Mount Vernon, both the Custis and the George Washington families were among its fanciers. Thomas Jefferson planted lilacs in his garden. Many of our poets and writers have written about their traditional popularity and fondness. And so the collection of lilacs at the Highland Park Lilac Festival was started in 1890. It now covers 22 acres. And yeah. Oh boy, I was super wrong on the number of varieties. There's actually more than 550 varieties. I said 66. So yeah, so I'm really enjoying this little fragrance here, Highland Lilac, and I just got the tiniest size bottle. And it really is pure lilac fragrance when you put it on. I mean, it's basically like leaning over and smelling the scent of lilacs. It's gorgeous. The problem in giving this a fair review is that they didn't want it to be cloying and overwhelming, and they wanted it to dry well as the fragrance fades. The problem is the fragrance fades super, super quickly, to the point where I would say like an hour from now, I won't be able to smell the perfume that I just applied. So it's super, super light. And to me, it seems more like a lilac water than a lilac perfume. I did, of course, get, this small little size, so maybe that's why. But I will say it's heavenly when the scent is on. I normally don't buy lilac perfume because to me it's usually too strong, too cloying, too much like walking by the door of Yankee Candle Company. It's with a sort of artificial, overwhelming perfume. This is just light, as if breezes just wafted through the branches of a lilac tree and you're sitting outside on a sort of humid afternoon and it reaches your nostrils. So it truly is a natural light scent. My only nit is that it's a little too light. It doesn't last very long, but it's lovely, and you can sort of spray it on pillows or sachets or what have you. So I do like it very much. So that's Highland Lilac. And then finally, ending on another garden note, I received this book. It's called A Garden Miscellany, an illustrated guide to the elements of the garden by Suzanne Staubach. Here's the cover of this book. Lovely light blue. It says, "Do you know a folly from a ha-ha?" I do not. And you know, if you watch gardening shows as I do, and you watch shows like Midsummer Murders or read Agatha Christie, you really need to know your gardening components. And so this is kind of sort of written for children or adults. So the end papers are a sort of bright orange, and then it's just an alphabetical directory of all kinds of things that you will find related to gardens. So, and nice illustrations. So here's a little entry on landscape gardening. And let's see what else we've got here. Labyrinths, mazes, kitchen gardens, potagers, Japanese gardens, Italian, herb, hedge, grotto, greenhouse, conservatory, gazebo, folly, haha. And let me just show you this 2-page spread here. This is lovely. This is for the Japanese garden. And it gives you some history, some trivia, some lore, the use of stairs in gardens, roof gardens, railroad gardens, pergolas, you know, just all sorts of things like that. So it's just a delightful little light gardening book. Expert gardeners out there, you're probably going to find this a little too simple for you, but I'm sort of a gardener in here more than out there. So for me, you know, the ideas of all of these things are lovely. And of course, if I ever write any sort of book or mystery involving a garden, I'll have lots and lots of resource information here so I know from whence I speak. That's all for today. Again, I hope everyone is enjoying Mother's Day. I'm certainly wishing all of you out there a great Mother's Day, and I'm thinking of my mother, Carol. She did pass away several years ago, but she's very dear to me, and I think of her often. She was such fun. Her nickname growing up was Legs Baker. And this was because she was such an excellent dancer, as was evidenced in the 1940s in the canteens during the war. And when people like the Dorsey brothers came through town and played at the downtown armory, and they would have dances, she was notorious for her wonderful dancing, and so they called her Legs. And she was also an excellent musician. She loved writing songs. She played the piano. She made the best roast beef Sunday dinner you would ever want, with all the trimmings. And yeah, she had lots of talents and a real love for life. And we miss her every day. So love you, Mom. And I wish you all a great rest of your day, and I'll see you again real soon. Bye-bye.